Whew, it's hot. And it's not just hot, it's quite literally scarily hot across a lot of the globe today. And it's only going to get worse as we go into next week. Also, severe storms are making a return to the US as we have severe weather outlooks for today, tomorrow, and Tuesday. But it's actually what happens after that that's most interesting with some of these systems that are coming in. And hurricane season is just about to ramp up. Literally everything is aligning perfectly to promote the idea that the Atlantic Basin is really going to start to heat up here over the next several weeks. But it is not going to heat up as much as Portugal, Spain, the UK, France, Greece, Belgium, and the Netherlands, though, as they are experiencing a record-breaking heat wave of unprecedented proportions. Temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius, that's around 104 degrees for all my Americans, have been recorded in multiple countries, smashing tons of previous records. Britain has issued a national emergency alongside its first ever red extreme heat warning. Nearly 3,000 people have lost their lives due to all this so far, and unfortunately, it's not going to let up anytime soon. One kind of crazy thing to think about is that if the United Kingdom actually has a high temperature of 41 or 42 degrees Celsius, it will be hotter in the United Kingdom than 99% of the rest of the entire planet Earth. Hotter than California, hotter than the Middle East, hotter than a lot of the Saharan desert. That's literally hard to wrap my head around, and a lot of people up here don't even have air conditioning because they usually don't need it. One of the 1% of the world that could be hotter than the UK on Tuesday is right here in the central US as we are about to deal with our own big-time heat wave. You think it's been hot? Well, unfortunately, we're just getting started as another big ridge is about to crank things up even more. Take a look at these high temperatures in the central US on Tuesday as we look at the GFS. You are not reading that wrong. We're talking about 115 to 120 degrees in some portions of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. This is not just normal summer heat. This is going to break records, and it's going to be quite dangerous. And then if we go even further out into the future, you can see that big area of heat just continues to build up and actually spread outwards into portions of the upper Midwest, the deep South, even the Ohio Valley, all the way back into the western portion of the US, where of course California, Arizona, and Nevada are absolutely dealing with blistering heat. But the concentration's right here in the central US, and things do not get better anytime soon, guys. Look at this widespread 100-degree temperatures all the way as far north as into South Dakota on Saturday. Check it out, Sunday is going to be absolutely miserable, even into the southeastern US. And once again, I'm scrolling really far into the future here. You can keep up with the date and time above my head, but I am seeing no signs of relief anytime soon. This is all the way back on August 1st. This is the kind of weather that leads to heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Remember, if you feel dizzy, you get real thirsty, you start sweating heavily, or if you see somebody that this is happening to, make sure you call 911 and cool them down with water or ice. And what's responsible for all this heat is this massive ridge that we see building up over here. But look, on the northern side of it, we do have a northwest to southeast extension of this 500 millibar trough. There's some cooler air up in Canada. When it combines with that warmer air right here along that boundary, we are going to see some thunderstorms for an extended period of time for a lot of people in the northern and northeastern portion of the US. So let's talk about that now. Do you live in Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia? Well, you're under a slight risk of severe weather today as we have a little bit of a cold front coming down that's going to spark up some storms. This goes from Lexington all the way up to Pittsburgh, and the main threat today is going to be damaging winds. Additionally, back here towards the Boot Heel of Missouri, all the way up to St. Louis and northern portions of Arkansas, southern portions of Illinois, you guys are under a slight risk of severe weather today as well. Tomorrow looks interesting as we have a slight risk of severe weather in Minnesota, Montana, and North Dakota, but more interestingly, we have this marginal risk of severe weather over here in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, all the way up into New England, and this is actually driven by a 2% tornado risk. So conditions are slightly favorable for tornado genesis tomorrow in Pennsylvania, all the way up through Albany, Springfield, Concord. So this is something we're going to dive deep into right here in a second. But Tuesday, we have a day 3 slight risk up here in Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, and very small portions of Minnesota. But I do think damaging winds will be the show stealer here. Let's take a look at that simulated radar where the time and date in Eastern's always above my head, and you can see by 2 p.m. today, we're going to see some strong storms moving through Louisville into Lexington. We're also going to have some rumbles of thunder up here in Cincinnati all the way up through Columbus. Some of these storms will be strong at times, and watch this turn into a big nasty line as it goes into Eastern Ohio, eastern Kentucky, portions of West Virginia as we get into the 7 p.m. time frame. And of course, we got to watch Pennsylvania tonight, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. All the way into midnight, we're going to see a lot of heavy rain, some lightning, some thunder, and some gusty winds through a lot of the state. Now, this is going to die off pretty quick as we get past midnight. But look, another round is coming back here in the Ohio Valley all the way down into the Mississippi River Delta as we have leftover convection that's going to try to go to the north and east. Watch this as I pull this into tomorrow. Watch how all this convection tries to reignite over here and kind of train over the same areas over and over again. I personally believe that isolated flash flooding is going to be the main threat with this tomorrow, but certainly watch out for all those storms as we could get an isolated hailstone or two. The big story tomorrow is going to be that tornado risk up here in the northeast. Look at this big swirly boy. You can literally see the warm air getting sucked into this low pressure system as well as the cool air wrapping around the backside here on the simulated radar. Usually when you see a storm swirling like that, if you have a warm sector and storms start to interact with it, we get rotating thunderstorms, and that is possible tomorrow. We have two areas to watch. The first one's going to be earlier in the day around 1, 2, 3 p.m. on the front of the warm sector as we might have some supercells pop up here around New York all the way up through Springfield and then move east through Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. Those could have isolated tornadoes with them. But even more concerning is this area of potential isolated convection that's popping up along the cold boundary in Pennsylvania, okay? And watch how that kind of turns into a squall line as we go into 5 p.m. I do think we're going to have some strong damaging winds around Allentown between 5 and 6 p.m. tomorrow. But certainly this is one of the more interesting severe weather setups we've had up here in the Northeast for a while. And you know, if things call for it, if we get a tornado watch, a bunch of tornado warnings, if it seems like something's going to happen tomorrow, I will be live, okay? So make sure you subscribe and turn notifications on. Moving on from there, you can see our next system dipping down from Alberta and Saskatchewan, bringing some heavy rain around Grand Forks, North Dakota on Tuesday at 2 a.m. That's what's going to slide down here to the south and east and bring our next round of severe weather for that day 3 slight risk. But we can't see it on radar yet. What we can see if we look further into the future on the Euro model is what's going to happen after that, which is actually, to me, way more interesting. Because of our massive heat wave and ridge over here, the dip in this trough really becomes amplified and allows for a lot of energy to come into northeastern portions of the United States from Canada. Watch this low pressure system right here. As it barrels down to the south and east, you can see that it's really going to try to extend some of that cooler air into the very warm air that exists. And I think that all the dynamics are coming together for a pretty strong severe weather setup over here on Wednesday into Thursday. One of the things that's got me concerned about this is the potential for tornadoes, as we do have a pretty impressive lower level jet streak on the front right side of the system as it dives down to the south and east. These 850 millibar winds, especially when they're above 30 or 40 knots, we call that nadir juice here. And lots of nadir juice is going to be available as this dips even down into portions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York on Thursday. So if the timing is right with this system as it barrels down to the south and east, we could have two different instances of widespread severe weather and localized tornado problems as we go forward. So make sure you're ready for that. And of course, we'll update you if anything changes. A lot of times severe weather systems in the summer are overlooked, okay? People don't want to worry about the weather in the summer, and I don't blame you, but tornadoes could happen at any time, okay? You got to keep your guard up. And in my opinion, the best way to stay prepared in a situation like that where you're not constantly obsessed with the weather is just to have a life-saving tool like a NOAA weather radio from Midland in your house. And that brings us to today's sponsor, which is myself, because I sell these things. ShopRyanHall.com, the best place for people who'd rather be prepared than scared. Right now, you can go to the shop, go to the weather equipment section, and get a NOAA weather radio for 10% off using the code SUMMER10. This radio, the WR120, is the best on the market. It's basically like having a tornado siren inside your house. This thing is loud. It's going to wake you up. And even if the power goes out, 99% of the time, the National Weather Service is still going to transmit a signal. Additionally, we have mystery preparedness bundles available. With this, you get one of the best weather radios money can buy and a randomly selected t-shirt from our awesome Ryan Hall Y'all merch collection. The cool thing about this is that you're only paying $5 for the shirt, and it's essentially free if you use the discount code, which works for this too. Once again, go to shopryanhall.com and use the code SUMMER10 for 10% off site-wide until tomorrow, Monday at 11:59 p.m. And of course, you know I put a link in the description for you. Go click it, all right? And let's get back into the video. Okay, moving right along into the most interesting, most exciting, most hyped up portion of this video, the hurricane outlook. Yes, thankfully, it's still very quiet in the Atlantic. I think that's about to change, and we're going to talk about that in depth right here in a second. But first, Hurricane Estelle, how you doing, girl? I don't even think we Talked about you in the last video. These things are just popping up out of nowhere over here in the Eastern Pacific, one hurricane after another. Here we go. Category 1 Hurricane Estelle has winds of 80 miles an hour and wind gusts up to 100 miles per hour. It's forecasted tomorrow to have winds up to 115 miles an hour and gusts up to 140. That'll make it a Category 3, but it certainly looks pretty on the satellite imagery. I do want to hit on the forecast for the Atlantic because even though there's not anything in the short term, there's certainly still some stuff we can talk about for the medium and long term. As you can see, we've got a lot of moisture out there. We even have some disturbances coming off of Africa, but because of this big ridge, dominant high pressure, everything's getting suppressed down to the south a little bit, and anything that does form in the near future may actually go into the Pacific Ocean without even having the opportunity to ride up into the Gulf of Mexico or up here towards the States. However, it's very early in hurricane season, and just because there's a pattern right now doesn't mean that's the way it's always going to be. You can see very clearly the further we go into July and the closer we get to August, a lot of that high pressure, especially the deep diving, southward pulling high pressure, is letting up here. We're starting to see the path become available for storms to take a more northerly track. And you can also see that if we look at the dust coming off of Africa, you can see we got a big plume coming off around the 18th and 19th. This dust in the atmosphere is actually one of the reasons why we've been so quiet so far. You need those clear skies for all that lift to really happen and for us to get thunderstorms that can organize into cyclones. But watch as how we enter the latter part of these frames, you can really start to see how that dust is trying to advect a little bit further off to the north, okay? And we also don't see as much of it kicking up back here in the Saharan Desert, leading me to believe that we're going to have less of it infiltrating our main development region. And it's not just me talking about this potential uptick in cyclonic activity in the main development region as we go into the future. We also had meteorologist Ben Knoll tweet out just the other day that a large-scale rising motion is forecast to focus over Africa and the Indian Ocean from late July into August. This will increase the odds for Atlantic tropical storm and hurricane development, and then we're going to get a lot of sinking air expected across the Pacific Ocean, suppressing the activity there. We talked a lot about this in my hurricane outlook that I put out the other day, which in my opinion is the best video that I have ever made. Please watch it if you haven't already. All signs are pointing towards increased activity as we go later into July and especially August. Who knows what's going to happen in September? I hope that me saying this doesn't scare anybody. It's just the truth. And we have hurricanes every year, and if you haven't got your preparedness plan together yet, you might as well do it now. This is a good reminder for you. If you live on the coast, get ready because things are about to ramp up. A super huge shout out to all of our members over here. Thank you guys so much for being a super huge part of the channel. As soon as I get this video up, I'm going to start making a TikTok. Did you guys know I have TikTok? We got 1.3 million followers over there, and I've been lazy. I haven't been posting, but I'm going to start today with trying to post as much on TikTok as I do here. So make sure you go follow me, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.